When you reach the end, when the last light flickers and you stand staring at the final wall you think you can't climb, that is often the very moment when God steps in. There's something about reaching our limit that opens a door for His limitlessness. We spend so much of our lives building plans, weaving strategies, tightening our grasp on what we think we can control. We push and pull, hustle and negotiate, thinking that if we can just work a little harder, we'll make life bend to our will. But life has a way of teaching us that we are not the master architects we imagine ourselves to be. At some point, every one of us will stand at a place where our cleverness, our connections, our money, or our stamina simply won't carry us another inch forward. And when that day comes, the human spirit does what it naturally does. It panics. It despairs. It wonders if we've been forgotten or punished or overlooked. But what if those moments are not the end at all? What if they are the hidden threshold where God begins to do what only He can do? Throughout history, we find this pattern over and over again. When the Israelites stood with the Red Sea in front of them and Pharaoh's army thundering behind them, they were trapped by any reasonable measure. No human scheme could have saved them, but the sea split open. When Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, there was no secret escape plan. He was as good as dead. But the lions stayed silent, and even Christ Himself, crucified, buried, stone rolled over the tomb, by all appearances, it was over. But death itself was shattered when God moved. We like to keep God in the comfortable corner of our understanding, but He has no use for our small definitions of what's possible. We think we're finished when we're out of money, out of energy, out of ideas. We think the door is closed when we're abandoned, rejected, or told it's too late. But time and again, God proves that human endings are His invitations. The end of us is the beginning of Him. Sometimes you may feel foolish to keep believing when the facts mock you. The world may label you naive for daring to hope after disappointment has drained you dry. But faith, real faith, has never made sense to the calculating mind. It is a quiet rebellion against the tyranny of what is visible. It stands on the edge of the cliff and says, "Even now, my God can make a way." So if you're standing at the edge today, if you've run out of plans, if you feel like the final chapter has already been written in disappointment, take heart. That is not the end. It might be the birthplace of something you could never have orchestrated yourself. God delights in showing up when we have no choice but to admit we need Him most. And when He does, no one, not even you, will be able to say it was your strength that turned things around. It will be clear that it was Him all along. Never confuse your limit with His. When you reach the end, watch for the beginning. So often we stand before a closed door and think that its shutting is a sign of failure or worse, a sign that we have somehow fallen out of favor with God. We knock and knock until our knuckles bleed, waiting for it to swing wide again, not realizing that sometimes God's mercy is in the closure itself. We forget that while we see only the door in front of us, He sees the whole hallway, every room, every corner, every hidden passage that we could never find on our own. I think about how many people drag the weight of regret behind them, because something they wanted didn't work out. The job they didn't get, the relationship that dissolved when they thought it would last forever, the dream that withered before it had the chance to bloom. And yet, if you look closely at the arc of your life, you'll often find that what you thought was a dead end was actually a divine redirection, a quiet steering away from what would have hurt you or limited you, and toward what would grow you and protect you. You and I can't see what God can see. We are bound by time and space and memory. He is not. While we stare at the door that slammed shut, He's already opening another far down the road. a door that leads us into relationships that will shape us for the better, work that will fulfill us, paths that will transform our character and our soul, but he rarely shows us the whole map in advance.
Why? Because if we could see the map, we'd cling to it, not to him.
Every closed door demands a decision. Will you sit in front of it and mourn forever? Or will you trust that your life is not as random as it feels?
Will you spend your days staring at the knob that won't turn? Or will you dare to believe that the one who holds the keys knows what he's doing?
Faith doesn't mean pretending that loss doesn't sting. It means trusting that loss is not final, that a shut door is not the same thing as a sealed fate. History is full of people who thought it was over when it was really only beginning. Joseph's brothers threw him in a pit and sold him as a slave. That door was slammed and locked.
But in that darkness, God was rerouting him to a palace, to a position where he would save countless lives, including the very brothers who betrayed him. If you find yourself in front of a door that will not open, I urge you, lift your eyes. Look for the path you would never have chosen, but might just be the one that changes everything. Trust that the hand that closed one door has not left you alone in the hallway. He is already at work, preparing a way forward you couldn't make for yourself. So the next time life tells you no, remember it might really mean, not here, not now, I have something better, walk forward.
There's more ahead than you can imagine. When we talk about miracles, our minds often leap to the dramatic seas parting, the blind seeing, the dead rising. And make no mistake, God can and does work in ways that defy every law of nature we know. But I believe some of the greatest miracles you'll ever experience won't announce themselves with thunder or lightning. They won't make headlines or draw crowds. They'll come quietly, wrapped in ordinary moments that at first glance seem so small you might overlook them entirely. We tend to think that if God is going to surprise us, it will be with something big and unmistakable, a sudden windfall of money, a disease disappearing overnight, a prodigal child walking back through the door. And sometimes, yes, that's exactly how he moves. But more often, his surprises come slipped into the folds of our everyday routines. A conversation that restores your hope when you're on the verge of giving up. A stranger's kindness that reminds you you're not invisible. An idea whispered into your heart at just the right time to set your feet on a new path. If you aren't paying attention, you might dismiss these moments as coincidence or luck, or your own cleverness. But the person who learns to look beneath the surface will begin to see that there's no such thing as just coincidence. When it comes to the care of God, think about your own life. How many times have you narrowly avoided what could have ruined you? How many times has help shown up at the final hour? How many times has a word spoken in passing lodged itself deep in your spirit and turned your thinking around? These are miracles, too quieter than thunder, but no less divine. I think of Elijah, broken and hiding in a cave, exhausted by fear and loneliness. He waited for God to speak through the wind, through an earthquake, through fire. But God came instead in a still, small voice. Not in the spectacle, but in the whisper. And that whisper changed everything. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for one big sign, so they miss the daily proofs that God is closer than their breath. They miss the ways he feeds their soul in moments of laughter with a friend, in a sunrise that catches their tired eyes, in an unexpected note from someone who says, I see you, I'm praying for you. So if you feel abandoned because the big miracle hasn't come, maybe it's time to look smaller, look closer. God's surprises are hidden like treasures for the one willing to see beyond what's obvious. He's in the details. He's in the interruptions.
He's in the quiet provision that keeps you moving when you didn't think you could take another step. The greatest mistake we can make is to assume that the mundane is empty. Nothing is mundane when God is in it. So keep your eyes open, your spirit attentive. You may discover that the miracle you've been waiting for has been unfolding, piece by piece, in the unnoticed corners of your daily life. If you want to see God surprise you, learn to cherish the small moments. That's where He often hides His greatest gifts. It's a strange truth that the things we wish we could avoid, the heartbreaks, the betrayals, the disappointments that leave us shattered, often become the very ground where God's greatest surprises take root. We don't like to talk about brokenness. We hide it behind polished smiles and well-rehearsed answers when someone asks how we're doing. We've been taught that broken means weak, that it means failure. But in God's hands, brokenness is not the end of the story. It's the beginning of something entirely new. If you look at the lives of people who have done anything meaningful, you'll see a common thread. Somewhere along the line, they were broken open, stripped of the illusion that they could hold it all together on their own. They found themselves face to face with their need for something greater than themselves. And it was in that place of surrender that a new chapter began. We see it in the life of Job, who lost everything that gave his life meaning and status. Stripped of his wealth, his family, his health, he sat in the dust and wondered if God had forgotten him. But what looked like ruin became the soil for restoration and revelation. Job learned truths about the nature of God he never could have learned from the comfort of prosperity. His loss broke him open, but that opening made room for an encounter with the living God that changed him forever. There's a humility that comes when our plans collapse. There's a wisdom that only pain can teach, the kind that softens a hard heart, the kind that loosens our grip on pride and self-sufficiency. When we are broken, we're finally able to see that we were never meant to be whole in ourselves. We were meant to be held together by something, by someone, far stronger than we are. It's a paradox that we spend so much energy trying to avoid. We pray for blessings and protection, and we should. But sometimes what we need more than comfort is transformation. And transformation rarely happens on the smooth, easy roads. It happens when the ground shifts beneath us, and we have no choice but to fall to our knees and look up. Don't misunderstand, this doesn't mean we should seek out pain or pretend that suffering is good in itself. Pain is real, loss is real, but so is the promise that nothing surrendered to God is wasted. The cracks in your life are not proof that you are beyond repair. They are openings for grace to seep in, for light to shine through, for strength to grow in the places where you were once most fragile. If you find yourself broken today by grief, by disappointment, by betrayal, don't rush to patch it up so quickly that you miss what God wants to do in that space. Let the brokenness break you open to something deeper. You may discover that the very thing you thought would destroy you is the thing that allows God to build something in you that can't be shaken. Remember, a seed has to break apart for life to grow. So does a heart sometimes. Trust that when you are broken, you are not abandoned. You are being made new. One of the hardest lessons you and I will ever learn is that sometimes the greatest act of faith is simply to wait. We are people of action. We like to fix, solve, push forward, make things happen by the force of our own will. But there comes a time in every life when no amount of striving can hurry what God has set to unfold in its own time. And it is in those long seasons of waiting that our trust is tested most deeply. It's easy to say you believe when life is moving at your pace, when the doors swing wide just as you knock. It's another thing entirely when heaven seems silent,
when the thing you prayed for stays just out of reach, when your days turn into weeks, then months, then years, with no sign that anything is changing. In those moments, faith either grows roots or withers away. There is no middle ground. So much of Scripture points us back to this unglamorous truth. Waiting is not a punishment. It is a place of preparation. Abraham waited decades for a promise that seemed impossible. Joseph waited in prison for years, clinging to a dream no one else believed. Even Jesus, the Son of God, spent 30 hidden years before stepping into 3 years that would change eternity. We measure worth by speed. We think the faster something happens, the more blessed it must be. But God does not operate according to our clocks. He shapes character in the waiting. He tests our motives. He purifies our desires. He strips away our illusions of control so that when the promise does come, we are ready to carry it without it crushing us. There is a kind of faith that flares bright in moments of crisis, but there is another kind, deeper, quieter, that burns steady in the long stretches where nothing seems to be happening. That is the faith that pleases God. That is the trust that says, even when I don't see it, even when I don't feel it, I believe He is working behind the scenes in ways I cannot yet understand. The waiting season can feel like wasted time, but it never is when placed in God's hands. Every day you choose to believe again, you are being strengthened. Every moment you resist the temptation to run ahead and force what only God can bring about, you are being refined. Your faith is becoming resilient, unshakable. So if you find yourself in that quiet place where the answers haven't come, do not lose heart. Do not measure God's faithfulness by the speed of His response. Measure it by the depth of His wisdom, by the perfection of His timing, by the certainty that when He moves, it will be in a way that leaves no doubt it was Him and not you who made it happen. Keep waiting, keep watching, keep your heart soft. When the promise finally appears, you will see that not a single day of waiting was wasted. God never forgets a faith that holds on when everything else says, let go. If there's one truth I want to leave deep in your heart, it's this: your story is not over. Not now, not tomorrow, not ever, as long as you place it in God's hands. So many people walk through life convinced that the last chapter has already been written in disappointment and failure, that the mistakes they made yesterday have locked them out of any tomorrow worth hoping for. They carry around a quiet resignation that this is as good as it gets, but that is not how God works. We live in a world that loves finality. The world puts labels on people: failure, addict, divorced, ruined, as if those words are the last lines written in bold ink. But where the world stamps the end, God writes to be continued. He is the author who never stops editing, rewriting, redeeming. He knows the twists and turns your story still holds, the hidden plot lines that haven't yet unfolded. Think of Peter. He swore loyalty to Jesus, then denied Him 3 times when fear gripped him. By every human measure, Peter's story should have ended in shame. But Jesus met him on a shore after the resurrection, not with condemnation, but with a simple question: do you love me? In that question, Peter's failure was rewritten as forgiveness. His cowardice was transformed into courage. And that broken fisherman became the rock upon which the early church was built. This is what God does. He takes the pieces of your story that you wish you could tear out, the chapters you'd rather hide, and He weaves them into something that reveals His mercy and power. He does not erase your past. He redeems it. He does not deny your wounds. He heals them and makes them into testimonies that help heal others. Maybe you look at your life today and think it's too late, too many years lost, too many wrong turns taken. But I want to remind you, God does not operate in straight lines. He is not bound by time as we are. What you see as wasted, He sees as preparation. What you regret, He can reshape. He can bring meaning to seasons that seemed meaningless. He can breathe life into the parts of you that have long been buried under the weight of regret. But here's the truth. He will not force your story into his hands. He waits for you to surrender it willingly. He waits for you to stop gripping the pen so tightly, trying to write every line on your own. The surprise is that the story gets good when you stop trying to be the author and trust the one who knows the ending from the beginning. So, if you hear anything today, hear this. Your story is not over because your life is not yours alone. It rests in the hands of a God who specializes in impossible comebacks and unexpected twists. Give him the pen. Let him write the next line and watch him turn the page,